Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So Avengers Endgame is just around the corner, and in anticipation of this amazing event, I thought it'd be a cool idea to look back and talk about Infinity War. I'm not going to be doing a full review of the film because obviously a year has already passed since it came out. I thought it'd be nice to just do 5 things that I absolutely love about this film and 5 things that I completely and utterly hate. So today's video is going to be the things that I love, and I'm going to be doing it in order of things that I guess I love the least and then love the most at the very top. But just as a kind of preface to this series of videos, just know that I absolutely love this film. It was an incredible event film to go to, and I will never forget the cinema going experience. I am super excited for Endgame, and here are some of the things that I absolutely loved about Infinity War. Let's talk about it. So the first thing that I really wanted to highlight is Thanos himself. The Russo brothers, the directors of Infinity War and Endgame, have repeatedly said that this film was definitely Thanos' film. And that's why at the very end we see Thanos will return instead of the Avengers will return. I think that the way that this character was depicted was absolutely brilliant. I thought that Josh Brolin did an amazing job because he really came to life. He wasn't just any old CG character. They really invested a lot of time and energy and money, of course, into his actualization, and his performance really came across as being real and palpable. You definitely felt the emotions that he was going through, especially when he had to sacrifice Gamora, his daughter, and this character is so evil and so twisted that you think he wouldn't come across as anything but that. But there were layers to Josh Brolin's performance, and they were able to convey the different layers in Thanos' character very effectively. Another interesting element to the character as well is the fact that even though his plan is utterly ridiculous and devastating to the universe, he somewhat gets you to believe that this is a reasonable plan, that his logic is reasonable and sound, when in reality it's just bonkers. So even though I would say that I haven't read the comics, but I would say that they haven't really leaned into the mad titan aspect of the character that much. He's very reasonable, he's very rational, and he comes across as quite cool and collected. But I would say that they managed to infer his insanity because his plan is just so out there and doesn't make sense at all. The fact that the Russos are able to convey different aspects of Thanos' personality is especially impressive, considering that up until this point we hadn't seen him do much at all other than just sitting in his floating chair. So there was a lot to live up to, and they definitely had to convey just how serious this villain is through actions alone and not a lot of backstory or origin story. So we get a sense of his power and his might the minute that he's able to kill Loki with just a snap of his neck. Loki was the huge villain, the big bad in the first Avengers film. In the first few minutes of Avengers Infinity War, it's established that no, Loki is nothing in comparison to this bad guy. And there's also the fact that he considers himself a father figure to Gamora, and that's intrinsic in the plot of the film itself, but there's also small moments that add to his personality, like when he says, "I like him," when Quill was about to shoot Gamora upon her request. The Russos were able to really insert small moments here and there to indicate the well-roundedness of Thanos' character, despite the fact that he is the character who has had the least amount of character development throughout the MCU. And number 4 is the construction of the film itself. I think that the Russo brothers did an excellent job taking into account the different storylines, the different characters and the character dynamics and team dynamics, and bringing all of this into one entity that is Infinity War, whilst giving each of these characters moments to shine, moments in the spotlight throughout the film. Now, there are definitely characters that are more prominent than others, but the fact that you're able to see a character like Mantis have her moment when she takes over Thanos' emotions the way that she did with Ego in Guardians 2, or when Bucky has his moments in Wakanda as an introduction, and also when he's fighting with Rocket, or how Okoye and Black Widow are able to fight alongside each other in this badass scene. I think the fact that they really took notice and really took care of each and every character for them to have at least one moment in the film that they really shone in was absolutely amazing. And the fact that they were able to balance out all of these storylines so well was amazing. I think narratively as well, the film is very balanced because they're able to really juggle the consequences of different films that have direct impact on this one. For example, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Thor Ragnarok, you also have Civil War playing in here. You have the bond that was created between Tony Stark and Peter Parker in Spider-Man Homecoming, making a presence here, as well as, of course, the first two Avengers films, where it was established that Tony has PTSD and he has constant fears of what is to come, the threat that's to come, which ends up being Thanos. And the fact that they were able to take into account these different storylines is very impressive, and they largely do it justice as well. There are some issues which again I will discuss in another video, but I think for the most part they did a pretty good job having a well-rounded story that also presented a brand new character, like I said, that hadn't been very well established previously. Another very clever element to the story's construction, which I wasn't initially able to fully appreciate upon seeing it for the first time, is the fact that now, after the snapping, the cast has basically been contracted so that we're able to really hone in our focus on the original members of the Avengers, and therefore I'm hoping we're going to get a bit more character development, a bit more character work on these Avengers, especially the Avengers that were shortchanged in Infinity War, like Captain America and Black Widow and Hawkeye, who wasn't even present. So because of that contraction, narratively it works very well because we're able to focus on the original team. At number 3, we have Thor's entrance into Wakanda. Now, I thought this was absolutely spectacular, especially considering that up until that point I had completely forgotten that Thor was even in the film. He was off doing his own thing in his own quest, and I felt like that was one of the weakest points of the film. And so when he comes to Wakanda and you remember, oh my goodness, this is a godlike being who has amazing powers, I thought that brought an electrical current, both figuratively and literally, into the battle sequence in Wakanda and really sparked a sense of excitement that I think the battle really needed. Now, to be fair to Captain Marvel, who I recently criticized for having terrible CG when she's all lightened up, I would say that it's not the best here either. There are definitely video game moments where he does not look like a real person at all. But overall, I think the sequence was very effective, and with his entrance, of course, you get really funny jokes like, I see you've copied my beard, and I'm Groot, I'm Steve Rogers, and when Rocket is used as an extended weapon by the Winter Soldier. So I really enjoyed that sequence. It's a short little moment in the film, but it definitely stood out to me as elevating the rest of the battle sequence in Wakanda. At number 2, I have Doctor Strange. Now, upon rewatching the film just last week, I realized just how integral and pretty amazing Doctor Strange is in this film. His powers have been expanded upon, and unlike the other powerful individuals in the MCU, his have not been hindered or restricted in any way for the sake of a plot device. They definitely make use of the powers that he had in his origin story, as well as any that he might have developed in the space between them. And narratively speaking, he plays a huge role in the series of unfortunate events that play out in the film. And in addition to this, I really enjoyed his interactions with the other characters from other franchises. I thought that they were really funny and inventive, but at the same time they were genuine and true to his character, especially when it came to him bouncing off of Tony Stark. It had some really funny moments, some really tense moments, and nothing felt contrived or forced. It felt very true to form. And in these moments we're reminded that even though Doctor Strange's origin story is pretty similar to Iron Man's, they are very different characters fundamentally, and they are looking at the situation from two very ideologically opposed perspectives. And I think that that was an interesting element to that storyline that really added some complexity in the Titan scenes that wasn't really present in the Wakanda sequences with Cap's team. Finally, at number 1 is something that I always appreciate about these films, and that is the character dynamics, character interactions that we see in this film. Now, the Avengers films are already famous for having that kind of crossover aspect to them. But here we have the crossing over of so many different franchises that have been established in their own separate bubbles since phase 1 and 2. And we get to see how these characters interact with one another, taking into account that even the Avengers themselves from the previous Avengers film of Age of Ultron have changed so much. If you compare the version of Thor that we got in Age of Ultron to the one that we have now, there's such a vast difference. He has gone through so much more suffering, so much more loss. He's lost his entire family now and the majority of his kingdom. He's a king without a place to rule, and his people have been decimated here, there and everywhere. And yet you can still see him trying to cling on to that bravado and that courage, and seeing Rocket kind of interact with him in that moment, in that very emotional moment, is so deep and surprisingly touching. And I think it really added some layers to Thor's character. And like I said earlier, I don't think there was a lot of character work done in this particular film, just because there were 500 characters to deal with, but the ones that did get that special attention really shone and really benefited from it. And then there were just a bunch of interactions that were absolutely hilarious. I've already touched upon a few of them before, but you also have Tony Stark, Peter Parker and Doctor Strange. You have Tony Stark's quippiness and Peter Parker's childlike naivete, and Doctor Strange is very much the straight man in the situation. I think it was just an excellent dynamic. The fact that they were able to pair up these specific characters, I think they worked very, very well for the most part. And that's just kind of what the biggest attraction of the MCU is for me personally. Again, I'll touch upon it in my next video, but for me, the plot devices and the contrivances of the Infinity Stones and all of that isn't really the main draw of the MCU. The main draw are these characters that have been developed through 10+ years. We followed them on their journeys. To see them all come together is something that has never been done before at this scale, and I think it was just such a memorable event film that, even though structurally speaking the film does have some issues, I mean, it's not a very good standalone film for one, but these characters are what elevate it to a whole other level, and that is what I love the most about Avengers Infinity War. So now that I told you guys the 5 things that I absolutely love about Avengers Infinity War, it's time for you guys to tell me what you love about the film down in the comments below. Please make sure you subscribe so you can catch my next videos, including one that has 5 things that I absolutely hated about this film. And be sure to like this video if you had a fun time chatting with me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!